mainstream, and we are excited about getting rocking and rolling today for Webinar Wednesday. I know for some of you, you might have gotten a note a few minutes ago saying that we were starting in an hour, and we are actually live now. Seems like daylight savings time has caught up with us, and you guys had gotten an update a little bit off of the actual time that we're going live. So hopefully you guys are going to be joining us here soon today. This is our third webinar of the year. And what I'm really excited about this is we're going to be talking about websites today, which I know for many of you is a happy point or maybe a sore point. I never know. But for many of you, I hope what today really does for you is give you some perspective on things that you can do on your website and ways that you can truly engage people and kind of pull them into the fold. Because I think the challenge that we have with running a business and creating a website is really making sure the website is working for you kind of while you're sleeping. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff tonight just to make sure we have everyone live and you are joining us. I'm just going to ask people to just post a note for me and let me know if you're able to hear me, you're able to see the slides on the page. If you're on our website, you can just post in the managed questions box. If you're on Google+, you can just post in that question box there. Either place would help me know or just make sure that everyone is truly able to see the slides and able to see what we have going on here. I don't see a comment yet, so I'm just going to do a peek myself and make sure everyone's able to see. Okay. It looks like we should be all set. One small thing I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to send out a quick correction note since people got the 1 hour reminder a few seconds ago. And just make sure everyone's all set. But it looks like you're there. I don't see the questions coming, the questions coming through yet. So let me know if you are able to hear me and everything sounds good. If you could just please let me know, yep, I can hear you, Stephanie. That would be wonderful. That way we know we're all set and ready to go. Right, I don't see a comment in yet, so I just want to make sure you guys are able to see me here before we dive in. So far, let me just look at my questions here. Okay, it looks like we have people trickling in. I'm starting to see some messages come in. So once again, just to make sure we're all set and everyone's able to see, if you can just post your questions on the box on the, actually, if you can just post and let me know you're able to hear me and we're good with sound, then we will get rocking and rolling. All right. So why don't I get started, and then definitely what we can do is answer any questions or anything else that comes up along the way. All right. So when we're thinking about websites that sell, what we're really trying to do is build a website that works for you. Build a website that really helps you reach your audience and talk to your target audience, no matter what product you're selling or service you're selling. I find this is really difficult for people who are more on the service side than necessarily on the product side. The reason being is people on the product side sometimes, because they have that visual item, that they find a little bit easier to start to develop websites that help them sell because they have a product, an image, and they can put a buy now button. But even just because you have a buy now button doesn't necessarily mean people are going to buy and sell. So it's not that simple, but that's a good starting point. But one thing I want to kind of talk about is, while there are some differences between product businesses and service businesses, and we'll talk about some of those challenges as you build your websites out and make changes and really create sites that sell. The key is you have to get comfortable with the idea that great websites are really developed over time, that you're not going to sit down and just build this amazing, awesome, crazy, sick, just blow someone away website. What really happens for many of us is that you create a website, and then from that you start to tweak, you start to change, and then you do major overhauls. Anyone who does anything on the web, even if you have a very, very high ticket item, so you don't actually maybe do the sale on the website itself, and that's rare. That's really normally when you have a high ticket item that you're not doing the sale on the website. Most of those sites, you're really going to need to just do a complete overhaul almost every 2 years. And the reason being is the web is moving so fast. The way that we interact with it, the way that we use it, I mean, between with mobile phones and tablets and all these things coming out over time, that a website you might have developed 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago may not function well on many of the mobile devices that we use. Those sites, maybe what happens is the things that people have found work well on these websites, those things change, meaning things in the top right corner, the bottom right corner, and so forth. And you don't want your website to look dated. The last thing you want from a customer experience is that they come to your website expecting greatness. And when they get there, they feel disappointed. They feel like you're behind the times. And when your website shows that you might be behind the times, or it's a website that's outdated, what happens is that becomes a reflection of your brand. That becomes a reflection of who you are and what you offer. And you don't want that to spill over into people thinking that either your products, either your services, or any of those items are dated as well. Now, this is going to apply across the board. I mean, you'll say the same thing when it comes to your business cards. It's the same thing when it comes to labeling you put on your products and so forth, that you always want to make sure that your content, your information always looks fresh, it looks modern, and it looks like something that really entices people. And to do that, that means that not only are you going to do that major overhaul probably every 2 years, you're also going to be working on the site like it's a living, breathing document. It's something that you're going to be updating maybe a little bit every month. Maybe you're going to be in a situation where you're going to be making tweaks, correcting issues, and so forth. So I want you to really get used to the idea that the used to the idea that a website is something that will change over time. It is something that you will kind of nurture. And as you nurture it along, you'll get a better and better product. And what that means is, that means testing. It means looking at different text, changing up the videos that maybe you have on the site, re-editing those videos, maybe redoing those videos, changing color, changing placement, and all of that. And then finally, the big thing I always tell people to do when you're thinking about building a website that sells, or a website that really helps you generate that income, is you have to do some benchmarking. You have to really understand what other people are finding that works. And a lot of times you're doing that benchmarking because, A, when you look at bigger businesses and bigger brands, they've done the research. They paid for the extensive report. They paid for the consulting team to come in and give them feedback. So why not leverage some of that? Why not take a look at what they're doing and how is it working for them? That it doesn't mean just because someone else is doing it, you will implement it. What you're trying to do is get an idea of what is new, what's current, what are people testing? And then you have to sit down and actually say, okay, I got to scale this back to fit my business. I got to actually make sure this works for who I am, what I offer, the type of people that come to my site, and so forth. So it's not an exercise of copying. It's more of an exercise of being inspired. It's more of an exercise of learning and making sure that as you look at your website and as your customers visit the sites that you're benchmarking and visit your website, what kind of experience or what kind of similar experience do you want them to have? All right. So that's just the big thing I wanted to kind of lay that foundation before we go any further, because I think a lot of times when people think of websites, they really think that you get this amazing website and you kind of put it up on a shelf and it just sits there. And the reality is that's not the case. The other thing you want to do is when you're thinking about a website, especially a website that generates sales, is the website has to have a specific purpose. There has to be, you have to be very clear on what you want your website to do. So for many of you today, if you have a piece of paper next to you while you're listening, take out a sheet of paper and just write down for me in like 3 or 4 words, what is the purpose of your website? What are you trying to get people to do? And I put in these circles here on the page some ideas of what you could be using the website for. You could be using it to show your expertise. This is very important if you're a service-based business. Maybe you're trying to show people how you think. Maybe you're showing people how you coach people. Maybe you're showing people how your process to helping a person go and transition into a vegan lifestyle. Maybe you're a person who does a lot of speaking engagements and activities and so forth. So you're going to show some videos of what that is. So the idea is, are you looking to show your expertise? Are you trying to give people a place to interact with you? So therefore, there's going to be comments and streams and maybe Twitter streams and Pinterest streams and things like that, are tools that so people can actually submit information or get information reviewed by you or submit questions to you. Is your website a place for education? And education can be a two-way street. It can be education about the field or about what you do. And it can also be education about what you do and how that helps people in general. So if you're something like an expert on, um, let's say, maybe you're a seamstress. So what you do a lot of times is you talk and teach people, not just seamstress, maybe you're about fashion, you're about clothing, about trends and things like that. So if you're that type of person, and we'll talk a little bit about what kind of service you might be offering, you may want to educate people on what are the trends, how can they spot trends. If a person is kind of a DIY person, then that's where you get into the seamstress side of it. You can talk about how people can create clothes, reuse clothes, how to go thrift shopping and enhance maybe something you get from the thrift store. Because what you're doing is you're now doing a little bit of showing your expertise, but you're also making sure you educate your consumer. So then from that, depending on the product or service that you offer, if you offer products, meaning products where people can buy some of your creations, maybe you're offering products where people, you have maybe a retail store where people can actually purchase some of the items that you recommend that they get, or some of the trendy items. Maybe you're a person, like I said, maybe you are kind of at the roots a seamstress and you do some actual creation for you. Maybe you have creation products or creation inspirations. Maybe people can post something that will inspire you and purchase it, or you'll make it for them, or they can send you a photo or send you an idea of something and you create it. So what we want to do is we just want to make sure we understand, like, what is the purpose? What are someone doing? And I'm trying to give you these examples, and I try to a lot of times not just give vegan food examples, because as vegans, a lot of times we get circled into the food side of things. But the reality is, as a vegan business, you really have the gamut of things. You may be doing skincare products, you may be doing shoes, you may be a person that's a vegan accountant, you may be somebody who is a vegan. I'm trying to think of another cool business like an accountant. I have to think about that. I'll give you another example, but something where really your essence of who you are. Oh, a good one is a vegan financial advisor. And a lot of times where that falls into place is you have a lot of people who will talk to people about how they can invest and invest in businesses that are cruelty free. How do you invest in businesses or work with businesses, especially when you're doing your planning or when you're doing donations or any of those things that you're doing for your business? How do you work with brands and businesses that align with your ethics? So I just wanted to give you one of those kind of examples, because I think I don't want you to kind of get pigeonholed into the idea that when I build a website with purpose, it only works for if I'm doing vegan food, or it only works if I had a product, or it only works if it was X, Y, and Z. The reality is you need a strong website that sells regardless of your service, because your website is truly your marketing tool. A website is similar to a brochure. It's similar to a direct mail piece. It's similar to sending out postcards or anything like that, flyers and so forth. It's an extension of that. And what happens is, because it's a tool that you can use to help people not only learn about who you are and what you offer. The most important thing is it can be a tool that can help you drive sales. And I think where many of us fall down is we get excited about the website and we think about, ooh, what if I put this cool image on there? What if I put this information on there? And we start to try to make the site look pretty. We start to make the site look what we kind of consider good. But you always have to take a step back and say, wait a minute, what is the purpose of this? How does this help my customer? How does this help me help my customer? And then that next step is, in what is my purpose? So when I say I want to do experience, or I'm doing it because of retail, or I'm trying to get exposure, then you have to make that additional step to say, in the purpose of my site, of what I want it to achieve, how does that help me drive sales? And what I mean by that is because if you're seeing your website as a marketing tool, it has to be a tool to help you achieve an actual business and financial and sales goal. Now, it doesn't mean every website means you're going to have transactions on that website. Now, most websites I'm going to recommend to you, probably about 80% of businesses should have some level of transaction happening on their site. But there's always that 80-20 rule. There are a couple of businesses where people are buying bigger items and so forth, that they may be coming into a retail establishment to actually purchase the product. They may need to get on the phone with you or get a personalized quote. Those are the ones where you maybe don't have the transaction happen on the site. But for the most part, if you're running a business, I would really sit down and think about, okay, what type of transaction am I going to have on my site, and what type of transaction I'm going to have offline. But either way, even if you're going to have offline and online sales, we still have to say, what role does the website play in driving that sales? And there's normally 4 different roles. It's either going to help you generate leads, and then maybe the conversion is going to happen outside of that. I've talked about that a lot, where I talk about email marketing. And I talk about how when you have a website and you design it to generate leads, often the conversion process is going to happen in email. Another option is you're going to use your website in the sales process. So when I say it drives sales, it's one of the steps in the process. And one of the key steps is helping people migrate from a visitor to a customer. And as I've talked about in other webinars, when you're helping someone go from visitor to customer, there's normally multiple steps in that process. And that's why a website that's maybe used for expertise, or a website that's used for education or interaction, what they're designed for is websites so that people can kind of get a trial, get a taste of what you do, get some type of experience under their belt where they can understand how what you do can help them. And by doing that, that education process, or that process of getting exposure to your expertise, helps them get one step often closer to turning into a customer. The other thing that websites do, or how things work together, is sometimes you're going to use your website as you do other conversion opportunities or lead generation. So while you may do something like, from a lead generation standpoint, you have someone go from a landing page into your email marketing, you may send them either blog posts or articles or videos to view, and that information is going to be on the website for them to view it. So therefore, the website becomes the tool that helps display and give people a place to actually interact with the content that you're sharing. And that's how now we're starting to use a website with other lead generation tools. Sometimes you're using a website for pure conversion. So people come to the site and they can actually buy. Now, when I say pure conversion, that means the conversion is happening on the website. But pure conversion doesn't mean a person just goes into a page and clicks the buy now button. It may mean they go through 1 or 2 different pages on your site, or they go through a process of signing up for something, receive something in email, and then from what they receive in email, they end up coming back to your site so they can actually purchase or upgrade. This works really well for authors. A lot of authors these days, when they're doing books, they'll actually offer maybe a first chapter of their book, or maybe they'll offer some of the recipes that didn't make it into the cookbook. Maybe they'll do a sampler ebook of some of the recipes, or ideas of the recipes that are in their cookbook. And what they'll do is they'll have people come into the site, sign up for it, you receive it in your email, and then in the email, there's also a link so a person can come back to the website and buy the book. And that's how you're doing a complete circle. So you're giving a place for people to see the book, interact with the book, but at the same time, your website is set up for conversions. And then the last one is repeat sales. I think a lot of times we think about getting that first customer, but we forget that once you have a customer base, many of them may decide to repurchase or they normally turn into referrals. I know there's some things that people maybe don't do over and over and over, especially when you do some of these big ticket items or big purchases. So often when someone's doing a big purchase item, or if you have those types of that type of business, what you'll do is you'll turn that into more referral. But for many of you, you have products where you're going to have a person come back and buy again. You're going to have a person you want to maybe get onto a monthly plan. Maybe you have somebody you're doing coaching or consulting and you're going to give them a 6-week plan or a 2-week plan or a 10-day detox. And once they've done a 10-day detox, then maybe you're going to take them through the 3-month program that teaches them how to eat well or eat better and so forth. So when I say repeat sales, it doesn't mean they're buying the exact same thing, but the idea that a person may start with a low ticket item, a lot of times people call this kind of like the coffee cup offer, meaning they buy something small, they buy something reasonable. So they kind of get that first experience with you, that first process of purchasing. And then once they purchase something from you that's more of a nominal cost, then they're more willing to go for the bigger program or bigger plan. And this is very important and very big on the service side of business, where you may start, like I said, with that like 7-day detox and then migrate someone to a 3 or 6-month plan. Okay. So is this clear so far? Meaning how to build a purpose for your site? Just so I get some feedback from you guys. How many of you could type in just in the question box, what is your current purpose of your site? Do you have that on the tip of your tongue? If not, you can also let me know in the question box if you aren't able to tell me. If you aren't able to tell me off the tip of your tongue. Okay, looks like I got some hellos and people are able to hear me. So looks like everything's good so far. Thanks, guys. I just wanted to say thank you to the folks that did that. I appreciate it. All right, so definitely let me know, what is your purpose of your site? And if you haven't decided on the purpose of your site, then just type in there and tell me, I haven't, but based on the slide that I put here, are there any one of those boxes on the page that kind of jumps out at you and you think that maybe you can build your purpose around that? Okay. The next thing I want to talk about before we start to talk about how to build the site and how to really create a site that sells is we have to make sure that the site that you either have or the site that you're building has the core components that your site needs. And this is a great tool that you can use to kind of assess your site and say, do I have what I need to do what I want to do on that site? And what I mean by that is I've created these 3 columns, and specifically they're around, do I have the functionality on my site so I can actually perform the activities that I want to do? Do I have the key components on my site that actually add to the experience that I want people to have? And do I have the tools on my site to actually help with conversions, not conversations? Sorry, guys, I just noticed that. And the reason I always bring that up is because what I find for most people is they haven't thought of their website in these 3 buckets. They really think of their website more as a blank sheet of paper, or they think of their website as, well, I need some images and I need something pretty. And what I want you to do is take some time, especially after this webinar, and sit down and say, do I have what I need in place on my site to make it sell? And these are some of the key things. Number 1, in the functionality section, you need some type of shopping cart. And when I say shopping cart, it's really a way to process orders on your site. I think a lot of times as product-based businesses, we think that it's okay to we feel comfortable with putting a shopping cart or something on our site so that we can actually process those orders. But what we forget is that as service-based businesses, the same applies. If you're doing consulting, if you're doing coaching, if you're doing any types of programs, maybe you're doing chefing services where you come out to people's house and you actually maybe cook in their home, or you prepare food or dishes for them. All of that can be put on your site. Now, I know a lot of you are like, oh, I don't know if I want to put my pricing out there. I don't know if I want my information out. Someone might see it. Someone might copy it. Yes, someone might see it. They might copy it. But you have to err on the side on Do you want your customers to see it? Is that more important? Do you want your customers to be able to order right away? Do you want your customers to be slowed down, meaning the only way they can order is by sending you an email, and then you send them an email back and they send a link and you go back and forth? For every email, every click, every conversation that it takes for you to close the deal, you're going to have people fall off. A, because they get busy. B, because the more effort it is to buy something or purchase something, it creates a slight deterrence. I shouldn't say slight, it actually creates a deterrence for many people. So the more you can make your website and make your environment easy for people to say, yes, I'm ready to buy at 3 a.m. in the morning and I can buy. Not I have to wait until you come in the office, until you read my email, and until you send me a PayPal invoice. So really think about that. If you do have products or services that have ranges, meaning you have things that are more proposal level or high level items, and you have some low level items, what I always recommend is add those low level items to your website so you can process transactions for something. For you can get people started for things, meaning we do bigger and large scale products, but on our website we will list things like our consulting services. We'll list our 1 hour or our monthly plans and so forth, because it's an easy thing for a person to say, well, I want to get started with something, or I'd like to work with Stephanie, so I want to do A, B, and C. So maybe I'll sign up for a consult so I get a chance to really kind of work with her and get a good feel. And that's what you want to do, especially in your service-based businesses. What can you offer someone so they can work with you on a very basic basis, so they can work with you for an hour, 2 hours? Same thing on the product side. If many of you are selling your products through manufacturers, or maybe you're selling your products other ways, think about, is there an opportunity for you to sell your products directly on your website? Now, if you don't want to take that on, that's completely fine. Then the next question is, what functionality do you need on your site to help people buy? So if they come to your site looking for your product, are you linking out to the site that people can buy on? So if people can buy it on Amazon, are you linking out to Amazon so people can get to that buy? If you only sell in retail stores, can people go from the product page or the product they're interested in and find the retail stores in their area where they can buy it or where that item's stocked? So always think about how you complete the sale process for your customers so they can actually follow in those footsteps. If you haven't written out or actually kind of thought through what are all those steps, then when your customer comes to your website, they're going to struggle as well. They're going to struggle with, well, how do I get from the homepage to buying a product? And if you don't know how to do it and you've built the website, then it's going to be equally as hard for a customer to do that. So you really want to think about, okay, what functionality do I need to take someone from coming to my website to buying my product? And a lot of that starts with basic things like a shopping cart. Some of that starts with, especially if you're going to have an interactive site, is there a way that people can submit comments, submit information? Do I need a forum on my site? Do I need kind of a social networking tools so that I can interact with myself, I can interact with each other, visitors can interact with each other? Do I need to be able to host video and audio? This is really important, especially if you do a lot of work in video and audio, and not so much because that's your product or service, but more of if that's the way that you demonstrate your product, if you're teaching people how to use it, therefore you're going to be hosting the videos on your website, you want to make sure your website has the functionality to easily host those videos, to show those videos, to share those videos. And yes, you can use YouTube embedding and so forth, but the key here is you want to make sure the website is set up so it can household display and actually easily a person can use that information. And the same thing goes for everything else here, especially if we talk about the column there for conversions, is do you have landing pages on your site? And I'm going to talk about that a little bit even more in the later slides, but I find that a lot of people forget to sit down and say, I need to have a landing page. Almost every website needs at least one landing page at a minimum. Do you have a place where people can buy or sign up? If you are a bigger ticket and a person needs to talk to you, do you have a form that a person can fill out? Instead of just having them kind of, here's a button that says email me, or making an actual putting your email address in the footer, I highly recommend creating forms, creating documents so people can fill out the information and give you the information you need. So when you respond to them, you can respond to them based on the questions they submitted. So instead of them just putting a name, their email address, and saying, yeah, I'd like to learn more information about what you do, or do you offer this, or can you do this? Instead, create a form based on the common questions and common things that people ask about so you know what their interests are and so that you can cut down on those emails. And that's how you start to create a site that helps you sell because you're using the site to gather the information you need. Now, the key is gathering the information you need. Don't ask for address if you're not mailing people anything to their physical address. Don't ask them 20 questions on the form. That's way too much. We're talking 2 or 3 questions that can help you understand. I know it'd be great to get everything from a person, but you have to prioritize because every time you ask them for more information, people get a little bit hesitant about giving out everything about them. So stick to the things that are crucial. Stick to things, maybe 2 or 3 things that you can ask that can help you better respond to people. Hence, this is going to make it easier for you to either eventually convert them to a customer or if it isn't a good fit, they'll be able to identify that. The other thing is around coupon codes and promos. I think a lot of times when we build websites, we forget that if we're going to be offering promotions, your website has to be set up so you can handle promotions. If you're doing coupons, you have to build a website or choose a website theme or start with some type of shopping cart or whatever tool you're using for processing orders so that you can use coupon codes, so you can create coupon codes. It's very difficult if you're using PayPal, kind of like buy now buttons, and you want to offer a lot of coupon discounts and change them up and every month, you're probably then going to want to migrate more towards some shopping cart software that allows people to pay with PayPal, but the shopping cart itself will help you manage coupon codes and usage and track some of that marketing. So that's the key. When you're thinking about your website and does it work for you, you want to look at these 3 buckets and say, do I have the components in place to help me make the site function well? Do I have the components in place to create an amazing experience for our customer? And do I have the components in place that actually help me convert? All right. Now, for many of you, you're like, okay, I get it, Stephanie. I basically understand the basic idea of what you're saying and the basic idea of what it means, but how do I put that in practice? Like, how does that really come to life? And the way it comes to life is really kind of looking at your website and diagramming out how your website's supposed to flow. How are visitors supposed to navigate your website? And what I say to most people is, for the most part, your visitors are going to come into the place where you are sharing links. Now, with the exception of a blog as an example, where a blog's going to generate a lot of direct traffic just because of the nature of blogs, most of the time when you're going to be doing guest blog posts, when you're doing promotions, you're doing ads, when you have a signature block on something, or maybe in your like in your social media sites, a lot of times they'll ask you to put a website in there. Most of the time, that's either going to go to your homepage or it's going to go to a landing page. So the yellow boxes I have at the top is when you think about your website should really have at least one homepage, one landing page, a landing page that's going to be designed to help you with conversions. Don't know why I keep putting conversations in there. And one that's going to help you with landing pages from a lead generation standpoint. One second. We actually had a question come in. I just want to look at it quickly here just to make sure I address it. Yes. Someone asked the question of when I talk about offline, yes, you definitely want to have your website help you with the online experience and the offline experience, just to answer that question. And what I mean when I say online and offline, it can be 2 things. Either A, depending on how you promote your products. Let's say, for example, you go to events and you do a lot, maybe you have a book and you go, or you actually, let me back that up, especially might be relevant for Linda here, is maybe you're a chef. So you do cookbooks, you do a lot of demos at Veg Fest and so forth. So what we want to make sure we understand is what's the experience for the customer when they interact with you offline? How is your website help you with that conversion process? Meaning, do you send people from the offline experience? Meaning, do you put your website up before the demo or after the demo? Do you hand out a little flyer that tells people to come to your website and they can download the recipes that are demoed at the event? And that way they can get on your email list, so then we can create lead generation. Do you send people to your website as a way for them to see your cookbooks, see what you offer? Are you sending them to the website so they can learn more about your services? So the idea is, how are you making that transition? And not just that, the better and better you get at your website, the question is, how do you make the transition simpler and easier? So if you are doing a lot of demoing and a lot of activities at local events and so forth, as a promotional tool, what happens when someone comes to a website? Instead of sending them to a homepage, do you develop a landing page for each one of the events that you go to? So therefore, when you send out the link may be, like for us, say it says Vegan Mainstream / San Diego Veg Fest, or / Dallas Veg Fest, as an example. And I hand out the Dallas Veg Fest link when I'm at the Dallas Veg Fest. So therefore, when someone comes from the Dallas Veg Fest to my website, I have the logo of the Veg Fest on there. I say, welcome. It was great meeting you at the Veg Fest. Here's all the information we talked about during the demo. Here's the videos. If you put in your information here and hit submit, we'll email you out the recipe, and it was great meeting you. Hope we can work together. Or this is, if you watched all my demos and you're ready to go veg, and you need a little bit of help, I also offer consulting services. Click here and check it out. So then that way, your website becomes a linkage tool, and it becomes a tool to help facilitate the things you're doing offline and online. And it can go the other way as well. You may have your website that helps pushes people to offline events, or helps push people to buying tickets, which are the offline event or offline service, to an event that you're hosting, whether it's a cooking class, whether it's a training class, whether it's a coaching environment, like a group coaching environment or something like that. Maybe you're in the healthcare field and you do local events where you teach people how to get off medication. How do you teach people to self-heal themselves, or educate them and do lectures and things like that? So that's what I mean when I talk about having a website that helps you with the offline experience, is how do you link those two together? Okay. All right. Let me know if you have any other questions while I'm talking. I know we got about 10 minutes and I got a few more slides to go through, but if you do have any questions in the meantime, please, please, please submit them. I love questions. Okay. All right. Actually, okay, perfect. So I'm going to jump back into the next slide. So when I was talking about navigating the site, what I really want to make sure is that when you look at your current website to evaluate it, or whether you're making or thinking about doing a website improvement, is always think that you should have at least those yellow boxes at the top. You should have a home page, and we'll talk about how to make a strong home page. You need a landing page that will be directed towards helping drive conversions. And then you need a landing page that helps you with lead generation. The reason you need these three is probably for three specific reasons. Number one, if you do any type of advertisement, to traditionally take someone from advertisement to a sale, they normally need to end up into a landing page. A landing page should feel like and talk about what the ad was about, and the landing page should be designed and simplified so that we can take someone from, you can get this great book, or you can buy this great service, or this is what we offer, so they can get a little bit more information about the offering and then purchase. Okay. On the landing page on the lead generation side, if you're doing any advertisement, promotions, ebook download giveaways, anything like that, we want to make sure we have a landing page that helps you when people are at the beginning stage of the sale. So think of the landing page in the middle as a person who's at maybe close to the tipping point of buying, and the other landing page is for people who are at the beginning of the process. Maybe people who are just exploring you, been to your website once, and you brought them in. Okay. And these are really kind of like your three biggies. Now, as your business grows, as your website grows, as you get really good at this, you're probably going to have multiple lead generation pages and multiple conversion landing pages as well. So eventually this will build out to maybe having like 2 or 3 conversion landing pages, 2 or 3 lead generation pages, and then obviously you'd have one homepage. If you get really good at this, you might have 2 and do what we kind of call A/B testing, but that's a pretty advanced, so I won't go into that in too much detail tonight. Now, in building your website, what I want you to do when you're trying to build a website that sells is when a person comes to your homepage, the big question is, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to contact you? Do you want them to learn about your product? Do you want them to learn, do you want them to learn something? Do you want them to learn about your offerings? Do you want them to make a purchase, or do you want them to subscribe? And what's important is you have to know what you want them to do, because ultimately every homepage needs a call to action. And for you to create a call to action, you have to know what you want them to do. Now, some web pages are getting simpler and simpler, where some people are sticking to like one call to action on a web page. For many people, it's really hard to get it down to one. So you might have 2, one above the fold and one below the fold. When I say above and below the fold, you guys know what I mean by that, right? That's basically the difference between scrolling down on the page and scrolling back up on the page. So you always want to have at least a call to action above that fold, or above the place where a person would actually be scrolling down on the site. But the key here is sitting down and saying, okay, if I want someone to ultimately subscribe to my email list, where do I want them to go? Do I want them to go to the landing page, lead generation, and then they subscribe? Or if someone comes into my homepage, what do I have on my homepage to get them to subscribe? Because if I'm doing a lot of my lead generation there, my conversion through subscription, through email, that's where I want to send them. If I'm actually trying to get a person to potentially explore or learn more about my product or my offering, which is that kind of offering button in the middle, then the question is, what types of pages do I need on my website to help them make that decision? What do I need to educate a person of my offering? And once I've educated them, where do I want them to go? So the blue boxes at the bottom are your independent pages. I just kind of have them floating there. Eventually, what you'll do is you'll start to draw lines together like I did from the landing page, where you're taking someone from a landing page conversion page to buy. And maybe what they're seeing is kind of an informational video in the end that tells them thank you, or gets them to upsell. The same thing you want to go if you're doing offering. You want to be able to say, if I take someone from the homepage and I want them to do an offering, what pages or what information do I need on my site? Do I need to give them a sneak peek? Do I need to get someone to sign up for a free consult? Do I need to put a video out there that explains how my product works, or why people prefer my product, or how people have used my product? So it's kind of a how-to video, so people can start to get a better understanding. And that's how you're going to start to build a site that helps you generate income. Because instead of thinking of your website as what pages do I want? I need an about page, and I need a contact page, and I need a blog. Instead, what I want you to do is think about these gray buttons and say, what actions do I want people to take on my site? And what pages do they need to see in order for them to take that action? And then once they take that action, what do I want them to do next? Especially in the offering side. Do I want them to be in the offering zone and then I want them to subscribe? Do I want them to learn and then I want them to subscribe? And when I say subscribe, this is where I know it gets a little gray and a little hairy sometimes, is sometimes you're going to have people subscribe to a list that just helps you educate them. And ultimately, after 3 or 4 emails, then you're going to ask them to buy. Sometimes you're going to have people subscribe because you're educating about their product. They said that they have interest in your product, but they want to learn more about that product. So therefore, you have them subscribe to a different list so they can get that information. So when I say subscribe, it doesn't mean everyone's going into the same bucket and getting the same emails from you. They're actually going to be getting different content. But the key here is, how do I achieve what I want to achieve on my website? And what content do I need to do it? And that's probably one of the biggest takeaways I want you to take from today's webinar, is really thinking about, what do I want them to do? How do I take someone from my homepage to achieve that action? Does that make sense to everyone? Have you guys just post questions in the question box and let me know. Have you thought about your website this way, or evaluated your website this way? And this works really well if you have your current website. So if you go to your homepage and say, from my homepage, where do I want someone to go? Or what do I want them to do? Okay, I want them to learn more about what I do, and not just learn what I do. That's the short-sighted approach. You want people to learn how what you do helps them. And if that's the case, the question is, what do they click on my homepage so they can do that? Do I have it on my homepage? Do I have a button on my homepage? Do I have something that takes them there? And what pages are in my website that can help them? So when you start to think of your website, instead of thinking your website as a composite or like a library of all the pages in your website, instead we want to think to look at it as pathways. How do I go from step one? How does someone go from a homepage to where? To your contact information, to an interview, interviews or articles. Then do you want them to circle around to the blog? Then from the blog, do you want them to go into a buy page and then into the informational video? So when you take a page like this, you ultimately want to be able to draw lines between the homepage and the blue sections to actually say, I want them to follow this path to get here. And that way, now you're starting to chart out a course to help people navigate your site and get where you want them to go, whether it's the buy on your site today or buy one day in the future. What you're thinking through is the actual process to handle that. Okay, perfect. We've got a couple more slides, and I know we're running out of time, so hopefully you guys can hang tight. I know we started a little bit late. So we've talked about the path. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about home pages and landing pages, because those are probably the most crucial tools in this toolkit, or crucial ways for you to actually make this happen. And the two things I want to bring up is, when you think about your homepage, if you're finding that your website's not helping you drive sales, then start with a blank sheet of paper. You really want to start with what I kind of call, or actually what the industry calls, a wireframe exercise, where you want to start with just putting the boxes on the page. And that's what I'm kind of have here on the left-hand side of the page, where you're saying, okay, what's in the header? What's the first thing do I want someone to see? Okay, in this body section, what information they're going to see, and what's all the way down on the footer. Now, for many of you, you may break up that body section and say, okay, I want a video on the left. I want some bullet points on the right. I want a button underneath that, or I want a box underneath that so someone can subscribe or sign up for my newsletter, and so forth. So think of your site kind of in these sections and say, what do you want to happen in these sections? Especially if you're looking at your website and saying it's not working for you, then take a step back and look at this sheet of paper. If you have a current website and it's kind of working but not so ideal, then take your website and cut it into pieces and chunks, and start to say, okay, do I have too much information here? Do I not have information above and below the fold? And then I'll talk about a tool a little bit later on that'll also help you in kind of increasing or changing your website. But a couple of things that I do want to bring out is, when you're building a website, above the fold, meaning without a person scrolling, a person has to know who you are and what you do. They have to know it quickly, whether it's the headline that you use, whether it's an image that you use. It's got to be something quick, concise, and to the point. The other thing you need on your homepage is you need content that speaks to your audience. So if you're targeting corporate people, if you're targeting women, if you're targeting families, if you're targeting people with children, then the photos should have people with children in them. If you're targeting singles, whoever you're targeting, if you're targeting women with natural hair, then have people who have natural hair on the website and the photos. I think a lot of times people forget that. The language should sound like that. If you're doing wellness and coaching and healthcare, and healthcare, but lifestyle coaching for corporate executives, then not only your photos should say corporate executives, but the language has to speak that language of your target market, because you want to make sure when someone comes to the site, they feel like you're talking to them. Now, for many of you, you're like, oh, Stephanie, I want to target everybody. The reality is you can't. You got to start with a major group. And what you do is, your homepage should be your major target market, meaning the largest market that you can serve. Once you start to serve that, then you create landing pages for the adjacent and other markets that you're starting to go after, okay? And that's how what happens is, when you start to do those adjacent markets, your ads will go to those landing pages instead of your homepage, but your homepage is going to hit the largest market. Every homepage has to have a call to action. And what that means is it's a fancy term to say, what do you want me to do next? So make sure your homepage has something that does that. And if you're trying to drive sales, the biggest thing you want to do is be able to either take them into some type of sales funnel, which is often getting them to sign up for your email list, or a series of emails that are predetermined for anyone who checks or clicks that box, or some type of tool that brings them closer to the sale. Maybe you do things where you do a free consult or something like that, then have a sign up box right on your homepage so a person can sign up for a free consult or a free quote or a quick quote or whatever that is. You want that right up in front and on the page. You want as few distractions as possible. So when you think of above the fold, you don't want 20 boxes crammed in and 12-point font so you can get all the text in there. You want things in bullet point fashion, a video or an image. So it's really 2, 3, maybe 4 things for a person to look at and make a decision, and also creates a good focal point. And then the last thing is your homepage has to be mobile friendly. It has to be something that I can use on any device that I get to. I can actually operate it and use it. I think a lot of times what we forget is we think it's okay, people can just roll through it. The next thing is your landing pages. Your landing pages are even simpler than your home pages because they normally don't have a navigation or very limited navigation. They normally have just an image or visual reminder of what you want them to do, the action you want them to take, especially if they're coming from an ad or some type of promotion. You want to try to get to one call to action. On home pages, most of us will have maybe 2, maybe 3, but on a landing page, it should be limited to 1. And then the last thing is anything and everything you do on a landing page is try to give them instant access. Anything that allows them to quickly redeem and get what they're doing, whether you're using it for lead generation purposes or conversion, make sure you pull them in as quickly as you can. All right. The next one is I just wanted to give 2 quick tips as we're wrapping up today's webinar. And I would probably say the biggest 2 tips is try to make your navigation exciting and fun and engaging. I think a lot of times when we think of like pulling people into fold or driving sales and so forth, we forget about little simple tools like navigation and the footer that are really free form fields for you to pull people in. So instead of doing the boring stuff that just says home and news and services, put something in there that says, grab your sneak peek, or, coupon code here, or free ebook download. But you can actually update your navigation and put that kind of text in there. Now, for some of you, it can get a little tricky because you may feel like, oh, I got 10 things in my navigation. I don't have enough room if I incorporate 2 or 3 words. But I highly recommend testing it. And that's really the key when you're doing websites, is see what it's like if you drop down to 5 items in your navigation and you start to put things that are a little more engaging, a little more action oriented, and also more call to action type of words in there, that you might see that people are willing to click on those. And also it's a way to pull someone into the pages that you think are the most dynamic, the most compelling, and conversion ready pages. Okay. And then the last thing I want to talk about is if you already have a current website, what a lot of people worry about or have a hard time with is not understanding how people are using your website. So I highly recommend either purchasing a heat map tool or using what Google Analytics offers, which is a decent heat map tool, is using a tool to understand how people are currently using your website. This is an example where the red is showing you where people are clicking the most, the green is the least, and obviously where there's white space, people really aren't clicking that much. This is a great tool, and like I said, Google Analytics offers a decent version of this for free. It's a company I use called Crazy Egg that does it. I think it's like $9 a month, so it's pretty nominal. And you can sign up for a few months. So just use this for a little while. You don't have to use it to the end of time. But I like it because what it does is it helps you start to figure out what are people using on your homepage, what are they using on your land page, and it can help you either get rid of the junk, because many of us have cluttered home pages. And because you can't decide what to put on the homepage or what people like or what people are interested in, we tend to throw everything in there. But if you have a heat map, you can get a better idea of, well, if I had X amount of visitors and majority of people aren't clicking on this, maybe I should remove it and put more of the focus and more of the effort into these other items. Or you may find that people are clicking on something that's below the fold and therefore bring it back up to the top of the fold. You may find that people are clicking on the box that you thought people would click on, and that's just good reassurance that what you're doing is working. So I really, really, really want to kind of stress the idea that sometimes you want to reach for tools like this so that you have your existing site and you find, do I have things in the right place? Are people clicking on something and not realizing that maybe it's not even a hyperlink? Maybe you have a photo that's not a hyperlink that should be a hyperlink because people are clicking on the photo and not the button. So these are really big key things that you can find when you're trying to build a website that sells, when you're trying to make sure your site is more sales oriented. These are some of the big things that you can do, some of the ways you can monitor your site, and some of the great ways that you can, when it's time for you to do that overhaul or make some of those changes, make sure you're building a site that's solid. Okay, so with that, we're at the 8 o'clock hour, so I'm going to wrap things up. Are there any other questions that I missed or any other things that we talked about today that you guys still have questions about? I'm just looking around. I just have a couple of comments in here. Thanks. Glad you guys, I'm glad you like that. That's good. Okay. All right. Well, with that, I don't see any questions in here, so I think we're good. Most of these are comments, so thank you guys so much for the comments. I really hope these slides help and the ideas helped on what you can do to really start to drive sales, improve your website, and also for many of you, it's not just the doing of improving your website. For many of you, it's really kind of starting to take that step back and saying, how am I using my site to help drive sales? How am I using my site to help drive activity? And when I say drive sales, like I said, you're not trying to just put a big fat buy now button on the homepage. What you're trying to do is say, is my website a step in the sales process? And if so, what's role is it in that process? Or is my website where the sale happens? And if that's the case, is my site built, set up, and created for that? Or is there an opportunity for me to use my site more in lead generation, which is maybe the earlier stages of it? It's the earlier stages of it, and how can I use that to take someone down the path to drive sales? So when you think about sales, it's not always the quick hit, yep, I'm going to sign up right now. Often what it means is it's really ensuring that as you look at your sales process, as you look at your website, is understanding your website's role in either creating the opportunity, closing the deal, or helping you find leads so you can sell more. All right. So with that, I'm going to wrap up today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining me. Really excited about doing these and I enjoy having them. We had a really good group register today. So I'm glad you guys were able to make it, and any of you guys that had to listen maybe at the recorded session, if you do have any follow-up questions, just let me know and shoot me an email. All right, everyone, have a wonderful evening, and thanks for joining. Bye.